Take them or leave them, but by 2020, the millennials will make up a third of all adults in the United States.
You may know one, millennials lacking life skills like cooking, budgeting, or time management.
They're not interested in owning a house.
Many millennials say buying a home these days is just not an option.
She is calling millennials the burnout generation.
According to a new study, millennials say that the term snowflake is in fact harmful to their mental health.
Millennials hate this shit. They hate it.
Welcome to another episode of Millennial Malarkey. I'm Adam.
I'm Alec.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Jesse.
And today's episode, you could call it maybe like an emergency podcast, a COVID podcast, a viral podcast, right? Anybody?
I mean, we'll see.
Anybody? No? Nobody?
No.
Whatever. Fine. Today we are talking about what's going around the nation with COVID-19. Anybody want to kick us off?
Yeah, I might as well. I've got a bunch of notes here. Let me get those back pulled up. A lot of people are just kind of referring to it as like the coronavirus, which is not entirely accurate because it's not the coronavirus. It's one of 7 different kinds of coronavirus. So just a little background on like the facts of it. Coronaviruses first started showing up in about the mid-60s. Sorry, disclaimer. All of this, unless I say otherwise, is from the CDC, like cdc.gov. So it's an official, source.
I would say that's pretty official.
I mean, as long as you believe what the government's telling you, but that could be for another time.
There's a good chunk of people, though, that are going to say that that is all a conspiracy, but we'll save that for another Conspiracy Corner episode.
Yeah, I'm happy to represent that faction later.
I think it was my dad that said maybe that he asked me, he goes, "Did you know that coronavirus is like, it looks like a man-made virus?" He never followed up with it, but I was like, "What?" So we might have to dive into that conspiracy corner a little bit later on.
That would be a good one. So there are 7 different kinds of coronavirus that we know of as of now. They're broken down into 4 groups, which are alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. And there are 4 main ones. That 2 of them are alpha coronaviruses, 2 of them are beta coronaviruses. There's 22NE, NL63, OC43, and HKU1, which are just numbers, but...
Gotta love biologists.
And then there's the one that we have, which is TP no mo.
TP no mo.
Clever. Okay.
Yeah, that's especially common in Sam's Club and Costco right now.
Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely coming back to that. So those are 4 of the 7. The other 3, which are much less common, there's MERS-CoV. This is the one that causes like Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. There's SARS-CoV. That's the beta coronavirus that causes severe acute respiratory syndrome, which, people just call that SARS.
That's the one we saw like back in 2004.
Yeah, that was a little bit ago.
Somewhere in there.
I didn't realize that was also a type of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. So a coronavirus is called that because it's basically a sphere with little crown-like protrusions coming off of it, little spikes. That's how it got the name.
Like the sun?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking more because it looks like a crown, but I guess it does kind of look like a sun too, which would also make sense for
like
corona.
The whole coronasphere and all that.
Well, corona means crown, Andrew.
I didn't know that. I was just drawing upon my astrophysics knowledge, which apparently is not applicable to this situation. So,
no, he's right though. The coronasphere is like the surface of the sun, and it does look like a sun, kind of, or a star.
Yeah, it's got flames.
It is currently undergoing fusion.
Yeah, it might be killing people, but it's also producing all the helium we need. So
Sorry,
Alex.
You're good. You're good. So this one they creatively named SARS-CoV-2. So it's the same name as the last one, just with -2 at the end. It's also called COVID-19, which literally just means coronavirus disease 2019, because that's when it showed up. Symptoms of it are that it's very similar to a cold or flu, where you basically just get like a fever, shortness of breath, coughing, sneezing, and then we don't have a vaccine for it as of now. So that's fun.
There is one in the testing stages currently in the middle of Canada.
There's a few different places that are testing stuff. I've got a friend who is, I believe, an intern at Nebraska Medicine, and she was telling me, she's like, yeah, like I actually got
they're all. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm guessing a lot of places are doing it, but she was like, yeah, like I got to deliver like an experimental, cure or drug or something.
Yeah, and well, speaking of working on a vaccine for it, and then also kind of tying into potentially the conspiracy stuff, but I don't know about you guys with all this whirlwind of the coronavirus stuff going on right now, but I haven't seen many anti-vaxxers voicing their opinions. Just gonna throw that out there.
Right. And that's why I would say there's a lot of mass panic, is because this virus is novel meaning it's new. We've never seen it before, and we don't have a vaccine against it. Mm-hmm. And right, with viruses, you can't do anything about viruses, right? You just have to let your immune system fight it, which is why a lot of the population that is elderly or without an immune system is dying. Which is why it's scary, right? So with the flu, you get the flu, right? And you go to the doctor. What do you get at from the doctor? You get like cough medicine. You get stuff for your headaches. Maybe something to bring down you treat your symptoms. You don't treat the virus, right? That's why this COVID-19 is scary, is because we can't treat it. We can only treat the symptoms. That, and it is more aggressive than like the flu or other, cold viruses or a cold virus. It still has not, killed as many people as like the flu, but I think that's more just because it's so new. It hasn't been on the scene long enough to really compete with something as right. There's some statistical errors there in which the flu has infected many, many more people than than COVID. Yep. So it started in Wuhan, China. They do not know if there was there was a patient 0, but they don't know who it was, or there's no like suspected people. The big thing was like, where did it come from? How did humans get infected? Because coronaviruses are one of the big ones. Where did it come from? Where did you go? Yes, where did it come from? Coronavirus Joe.
I'm so happy I'm not the only one that thought about that right now, Adam.
Not a problem.
So a lot of people...
So it started in Wuhan.
Yeah, a lot of people speculate that it was like from like tainted seafood or other animals sold at like a Wuhan like market. A lot of people thought it was like bats or snakes, but there's nothing to prove that.
From my own research, I have no idea what my sources are. This is just me reading articles online, so take this how you will. But a lot of these coronaviruses are common in bats. And actually, I believe SARS, the one from like 4 or 6 or a decade ago, whatever.
So part of the reason that a lot of people are more scared about this than they have been about, other pandemics in the past, like Ebola and Zika, is that this one is airborne. So it can, spread from like coughing, sneezing, just easy stuff like that. So if it's in the air around you, then you could potentially pick it up. And that's how it's spreading so fast with like, a bunch of people traveling and how easy it is to spread. That's why we're in such a emergency state right now.
Right. I mean, like with Ebola and Zika, correct me if I'm wrong, but those diseases were much, much more deadlier, as in like if you got it, you were probably going to die, or you had a lot higher chance of dying from Ebola than you did COVID. However, conversely, COVID is much, much easier to catch or transmit than the other pandemics like Ebola.
I think so, yeah.
Which is kind of frightening.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, like, it's hold on, let me find the numbers. I wrote them down here. There's a website called Worldometer that just gives you like stats, like just numbers on, situations in the world, population, and, stuff like this too, that's like diseases. So I actually checked it just a few minutes before we started, and it was like as of March 15th, there are 167,682 cases worldwide. There have been 6,456 deaths from it, but there have also been 76,598 recoveries from it.
Right. And so another problem with this statistic is, how do you know that you have it? Right. So I don't know, from my preliminary research, all I could find is that the only way you could test for it was to do a PCR for it, which is kind of expensive and whatnot. So not a lot of people do it. So this is only just the reported cases. So it could be much more than that. It could be
plus you can be a carrier for like 2 weeks, and with the incubation time or with whatever, however that goes, you might not have any symptoms, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So even if the amount of people that have it right now could be much higher, they just don't know they have it yet because they're not showing anything.
Exactly. So take those numbers how you will, and testing for it. There's not a good test for it. You can only really do the PCR.
What does PCR mean?
Polymerase chain reaction. So you can use, I think it's like specifically you use reverse transcriptase, which is basically a way to take a sequence of proteins, which is what these viruses are. I believe COVID. What was COVID? It was a positive strand something. It was like a positive strand DNA, I believe. And so you can take the reverse transcriptase and basically multiply the DNA transcripts of the DNA so you can actually see it, and then you run it on a gel. You cut it up into a bunch of pieces and you run it on a gel. And so if it looks like the DNA, from the COVID, it's going to have a certain pattern when you run it on the gel as opposed to different patterns.
You certainly said a lot of words there.
Yeah. So you take the DNA from the virus, you multiply it a bunch of times, and then you use these proteins to chop it up into tiny pieces, and then you run it, and then you can apply it an electrical current to it, and it'll migrate on this gel. And so you'll have these different bands, right? And so each band corresponds with a molecular weight of these DNA fragments that you chopped it up into. And so you can basically have an identity or a certain pattern of these DNA fragments of these bands on the gel.
So what I'm hearing is you take somebody's DNA.
Yeah, you can do it with any sort of DNA.
You put it on like a taffy stretcher, and like you stretch it all out, and then you sit there with like a gel and like a magnifying glass, basically an atomic or chemical microscope or whatever, and like sit there and like.
Yeah, you take a scalpel DNA. And you chop each single strand of DNA.
That's right. But like essentially something is in there scanning along the strand of DNA, and when it finds a match, it's like, hey, this segment's got it. That means you have it.
Not necessarily. So it's like, shall I explain it again?
Simpler terms. Talk to me like I'm 12.
You take the DNA and you multiply it a bunch, so you have a lot of the DNA.
Stop. Talk to me like I'm 9.
So you have a bunch of the strings, right? And then these globs chop up the strings, right? And some of the strings are like 20 inches long, some of the strings are 10 inches long, some of the strings are 5 inches long.
Okay, but size doesn't matter, so continue.
Right, and so everything has its own unique DNA sequence, right? So if you apply the proteins to any sort of DNA sequence, you're going to get a unique pattern of lengths of DNA, right? And so you can have this unique pattern for the virus, right? So I have my own unique pattern, you have your own unique pattern, right? Which is why also how scientists can look at DNAs and how percentage similar you are to other things, right? It's just how similar is your pattern to others.
I'm like 85% banana, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Well, all that DNA doesn't really do anything anyway. So but that's how you test for it, and it's a very expensive way of doing it. Very long. You have to take a lot of time to run the PCR. And I'm not sure on the sensitivity of the test, but sensitivity being like what is like the lowest amount you can test for a positive, right? Which that's getting into like epidemiology and all that stuff. But that being said, there's not a good test for it.
I will take your word for it.
Yeah, it's above my pay grade.
I really want to know now. Can bananas and plants get like, since they're like 85% or whatever the same DNA, can they get COVID-19? Can it be transmitted through other like organic?
No. So COVID-19 actually binds to an enzyme called ACE2 in your lungs, which is how you get it, right? So it's really only humans, I believe. Any organism that has that enzyme.
I read something that was like about a couple in China who had a dog that, when this was all breaking out, they were like, oh, we got to see, if the dog can get it too. And the dog had spent enough time with him that they tested it and it showed like a weak positive is how they called it or what they called it. And I forget where I saw the statistic, not the CDC. But essentially what that means is that animals can carry it. So, they're not going to show like the symptoms, of course, but that's just another way for it to spread.
Yeah.
All right. So breathing, living things, not living things.
Right. So, it uses the ACE2, which is it's actually the ACE2 enzyme is actually an important protein in regulating your blood pressure. But it's most highly upregulated in your lungs, which is, why it's also bad. So the virus will enter your body through your lungs, basically, which is why, it's called SARS, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome, right? Which is why you have all these respiratory problems. So if you don't have the immune system to fight it off, you're going to have a lot of trouble breathing, and you won't be able to get oxygen to your body, which is how you die if you don't have an immune system.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, okay, so what has Corona taken offline? I'm a grad student. It's wiped out my school. What else has it wiped out for you people? So for me, it's school. Adam, what did it wipe out for you?
So for my work, I do a lot of my work online, so it's not really changed my life a lot, except that they've canceled and or postponed the NHL. The Caps were going to make a deep run to the Stanley Cup, beating the Bruins.
Yeah, I disagree with you there, but
probably not. Caps are doing terrible, but
they don't have to rest.
It's kind of disappointing with all the sports getting canceled.
Yeah, because it's not just the NHL too; it's the NBA and MLS too, right? Plus, March Madness is gone.
I think he meant March Sadness.
For you guys, maybe. For us too, I'm not gonna lie.
Also, my brother, he was supposed to, for spring break, he was going to take 2 weeks to go abroad to Holland, I believe, Denmark, The Hague, wherever that is. But they had to cancel all their flights and all their Airbnbs and whatnot. And he has nothing to do for the next week. And all his classes are taken to online, as well as my sister and my brother graduate this semester, and they're not sure if they're going to be holding a graduation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Plus, another big thing is that I have heard a lot of high school proms have been getting canceled.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just universities that are, canceling and going to online. There's a lot of public schools. Like we all went to Park Hill South, and I know that they've recently, made that announcement that they're going to be doing online only for a while.
Congratulations. You never had to leave your house this whole time. We made you wake up for nothing.
Yeah.
You could have been doing it online the whole time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not as effective, of course, but, it's definitely doable, and they're going to make it work.
Sure.
But it's just not ideal by any means.
Right. Andrew, what about you? Has COVID affected your life?
Well, so I played a show last night in downtown Nashville, which I was a little worried was going to get canceled because everything else was getting canceled. But actually, because of everything else getting canceled, we had a sold out show because people wanted to go to the only thing left. So, if anything, it's affected my life for the better as of last night. But no, like a lot of shows have been getting canceled around here. I know some people are worried that the stadium tour is coming through here. Like we've got Justin Bieber coming up, Five Finger Death Punch, Harry Styles or whatever. Those haven't officially been called off yet, but some people are worried about that. Also, a lot of, there's a lot of musicians out here in Nashville that like that kind of main touristy strip of road, I guess here. It's called Broadway. It's where all the honky tonks are, and actually it's where Bridgestone Arena is, where the Preds play and all that. There's a lot of musicians out here that have kind of like fixed spots, if you will, at those locations where their cover band is like always at this bar at this time and this bar at that time. They've kind of earned their place there. And a lot of them have kind of lost those jobs for the foreseeable future. And for some of them, that's a primary source of income, which it's kind of hard for them, especially since actually at the show last night, there's a few people there that have lost their, performing jobs due to it. And a couple of them actually lost their house to the tornado and are homeless now, that tornado that swept through here a couple weeks ago.
Geez.
So not really a good time to be them. But that's the main thing as far as stuff going up here. Oh, and actually, my girlfriend works at Sam's Club right now. And she said that some lady claiming to be affiliated with Blue Cross, Blue Shield, whatever that is, came and said that they're seriously...
the health insurance company?
I don't know. She said, to be honest, I wasn't really listening for the majority of that conversation. My interest peaked when she said that whoever this lady was said that there are rumors of the state of Tennessee getting just totally shut down, nothing being open. To prevent it. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm guessing that's probably not going to happen, but just to be safe, I went to Publix the other day to load up on some frozen corn and peas and pot stickers and all that stuff in case I don't have a place to go grocery shopping for a while. So, but I mean, at the same time, I guess, worst case scenario, I can just go get my groceries at Price Chopper and drive the 9 hours back here. So.
Oh wow!
But that's the main thing for me is music's pretty much down. Who knows if the state's still going to be open in a couple weeks? That's it for me. But Alec, what about you? Because you're way the heck away from the rest of us.
California was like one of the first states, I think, to be affected by it. The first state in America to be affected by it was, I think, Washington, which is still West Coast, and I think it kind of traveled from there, but. There have been a bunch of, I forget the number, there was like 400 some schools in California that have shut down and, moved to the online situation. And for me personally, though, there really wasn't a lot of concern because, well, for me, I am technically unemployed. I'm working from home, just doing some freelance editing. So, my day consists of getting out of bed, sitting at my computer, going back to bed. So I'm not at risk. My girlfriend, though, she's a music therapist, and her job is basically driving around to different clients to go and, work with them. And a lot of those clients are in school districts. So they've, stopped, a lot of that. But she's kind of worried about, like what that is going to mean for her and like what the next step is going to be because, we just moved out here. I'm barely making any money. And then, if she stops making money as well, or if she's not making as much as she was expecting, then that'll kind of be hard on us. But, it's just, like everyone else, we're going to just roll with it and make the best out of what we can. So.
In the immortal words of Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way.
Chaos theory.
Yeah, basically, Adam. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Well, may I ask you guys, since Alec, you mentioned that, just getting up and working on the computer basically the majority of the day and then going back to bed, you don't really think you're at risk for it. Have any of you guys taken precautions to, I guess, avoid contracting it?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, cool. Me neither.
0. I've gone about my normal day. I go to the gym still. It's kind of empty now, which is nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, dude, same here.
I mean, I've always cleaned my equipment afterwards. That's not changed. You know, I don't wear masks out in public. I'm not worried. If I contract it, the likelihood of me dying from COVID is extremely low.
Yeah.
You know, am I concerned for my grandparents? You know, my grandfather just had a knee replacement 4 months ago. You know, they're both over the age of 80. Am I concerned for them? Yeah. You know, for me personally, no. I've changed 0.
Right. I'm definitely in the same boat where it's like, you know, we went out yesterday to like go to Costco. We just needed groceries. We were not being those people that are like, we're going to, you know, buy, you know, 200 rolls of toilet paper. But, you know, we got, you know, some food like we needed and left, and that was it. But I feel like there was definitely a lot of people there, and you definitely see a lot of people wearing the masks.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And
I haven't encountered anybody wearing a mask in Kansas City.
Really? Maybe it's California then.
We have people here doing it. It's okay.
Huh.
But we are an international school, so.
Rolla, the bustling town of Rolla, Missouri.
I want to make a little note about this too, because like the masks, like, yeah, they do, you know, protect you to some degree, but what they're really for is to not keep stuff out, but to keep stuff in. Like if you're wearing a mask, you should be doing that because you're sick. Like that's why, you know, like if you see like pictures or videos of like streets in like China, you'll occasionally see people doing that. That's because those people are sick. They are wearing the mask to keep others from getting sick. So really, if you see someone wearing a mask here, it's probably because they don't understand and they think, oh, this is how I'm going to keep it out of me. But really what that's doing is like keeping every pathogen they possibly can from getting outside of their nose and mouth area. So it's almost like you're trapping it there.
I 100% agree. It's a lot better if the sick people wear masks instead of the healthy people.
Right. And I mean, like they're essentially surgical masks. Like they're called that because surgeons wear them in surgery, because if you're cutting someone open, you need to protect your nose and mouth so you're not breathing or getting any sort of, you know, germs into another person's system. That's what those masks are for.
Right. Right.
Which actually, let's talk about that real quick, because there's a lot of things that, well, there's really not a lot of things. There's like a couple things that the CDC is like, hey, you should be doing this. Like washing your hands. People are making a big deal out of this now. Like, oh, you need to wash your hands. And it's like, well, yeah, you should have been doing that anyway. Like we shouldn't need a global pandemic for people to think, oh, I should wash my hands after going to the bathroom.
Wait, when should we wash our hands, Alec?
Well, every time you go to the bathroom, but honestly, with everything going around, you should be doing it a little bit more.
Fair enough.
Dude, it drives me crazy that even now, like I still like see people like in public bathrooms that'll like walk out of a stall and just leave.
Well, yeah, but you're not going to the bathroom on your hands.
Why are you defending this, Andrew?
Because I might be guilty of it. I'm just kidding. I'm like the most germophobic person in this group. Of course, I wash my hands.
Yeah, that is actually very true.
Yeah.
It is very true. What else does the CDC recommend?
I know social distancing is a big thing that people are pushing right now.
Yep. And that's, you know, kind of the reason for everything going online or shutting down or closing, whatever the case is. They really recommend that you, just avoid sick people in general. Obviously, you know, if someone has COVID-19, you want to avoid them. But they're also saying, you know, like just in general, keep your distance from other people because, you know, you don't know. There is, like we mentioned earlier, that incubation period where you could be carrying COVID-19 for about 2 weeks before realizing it. So you could definitely be carrying and spreading it without realizing.
Well, and they're trying to get tighter on that social distancing thing too. You know, a week ago or whenever all the NBA and NHL stuff started canceling, I think like right before they started canceling all their stuff, they were saying that the government was advising against or banning, I think, you know, congregations of people with crowds of like 1,000 people or greater. And I don't know.
I was saying like 250 or more.
Yeah, well, yeah,
it
was like bigger numbers like that. But then I think maybe it was just the state of Tennessee. I don't remember, but I started seeing it around my feed that they were advising against crowds of 25 people or more now. So it went from what I was seeing of, a couple hundred to 1,000 and above to now like they don't want groups bigger than 25 getting together, period. So they're definitely trying to kind of crack down on how many people they think is an appropriate amount to be in one space. But then at the same time, if they're trying to crack down to that point where it's only, like a couple dozen people can be in any place at the same time, I don't know how they plan on keeping like grocery stores and restaurants open.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But again, maybe it wasn't an accurate thing. I just saw it a couple times in like my Facebook feed or whatever, and I think it was all Tennessee people, so it might not even be where you guys are, but just seemed a little like that seems a bit strict to me, but.
Right.
Certainly,
well, they also might be saying that just so you can justify closing schools,
Yeah, maybe that's true as well.
Who knows? Anyway. So, what else does the CDC recommend?
That's, the big stuff. That's really all we can do is just try to stay clean, practice good hygiene, avoid other people. That's really all it is.
Right. Anybody, Jesse, do you have any closing thoughts before we head to the Would You Rather?
Sorry, I've got a thought real quick, Jesse, if you want to keep thinking for a second.
Go for it.
As I mentioned, my girlfriend works at Sam's and heard that rumor or whatever about the state closing, but also as working in like a wholesale environment where people are, coming in and grabbing a ton of toilet paper and bottled water and stuff. I've heard a lot of really negative things going down with her getting cussed out, other employees getting cussed out, literal fist fights happening. One of the cashiers, which is an older lady that works there, literally got punched by a member because he was getting frustrated waiting in line, and she tried to, ask him to be patient, and he literally punched her in the chest. So I mean, it really sucks that this is going around, but I think people need to kind of chill a little bit. And, there's definitely some people at risk, and we should do everything we can to prevent the spread of this. But I feel like this is kind of bringing out a lot of the worst in people, and that really just kind of sucks to see, because I feel like it's really not necessary to, start essentially rioting over what's, maybe not that much worse than the common cold or the flu.
That's an interesting point. Like it's not, one person against the world. It's the world against the virus, and that people are kind of losing sight of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I 100% agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing all these posts about like people buying up all the toilet paper and food, and then all the old people, who don't have the means, to get out or get up and get out of the house, are having a hard time finding the essentials now.
Well, they don't have to have a hard time. They can buy it from me.
Yeah, for $2,000.
Yeah, for a slight increase in price.
There was a guy, I just saw this, like, I think CNN posted a video about it, and it was this guy that like went around to a whole bunch of different states. I think he might have been in Tennessee, and he went around to a whole bunch of states around him and like bought like all the like cleaning supplies and hand sanitizer and like all this stuff. He basically had like 18,000 bottles of like hand sanitizer and, disinfecting wipes and all this stuff. And that was his goal, is to sell it on Amazon for a higher price. Amazon took all his listings off and were like, you can't do that, and basically shut him down. And now this guy is just out like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I saw that. And eBay actually shut him down too.
Yep, that sounds right. I mean, like,
that is wrong on a lot of levels.
But good for Amazon and eBay for sticking to that.
Hey, wait, isn't that technically controlling a free market?
Andrew, you're the economics major.
Yeah.
Hey, all I can say, guys, is that supply equals demand at market equilibrium. There you go. Supply equals demand. Bing, bang, boom. So
thank you.
I think that answers your question.
You got a major in that.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and you've seen the videos of how hard I was banging my head last night. I might only have a dozen healthy brain cells left.
Dozen healthy brain cells.
Goodness gracious. All right. Any last thoughts?
Coronavirus bad.
That's
Good stuff.
Pretty good. That's a good last thought.
That's the title of the episode right there.
Coronavirus bad.
Coronavirus, it bad.
All right, Jesse. Would you rather be in jail for 5 years or be in a coma for a decade?
I think I'd do the hard time.
The hard time.
Yep.
Right.
You put me in the clink because then I'd be awake.
All right.
I wouldn't want to be a vegetable. Do you know how hard it would be to recover from not moving for 10 years? I'm a big boy. Do you think those people would come in there and move my legs around every day to make sure I didn't lose all my muscle?
I would.
I don't think so. Thank you, but I don't think the people at the hospital would.
Well,
be like, yep, here's our local fruitcake. Sitting there like the vegetable he is.
wait,
Jeez.
fruitcake. The fruitcake sitting there like a vegetable. What?
I don't know.
Oh my God, I love you, Jesse.
It'd be like, hey guys, hey doctor students, look at this guy. If you poke his toe with a needle, he doesn't flinch. And I wake up and be like, why does my foot hurt? So no, I wouldn't trust the doctors. Are you kidding me? They'd have way too much fun with me. They'd just sit there and like poke and prod and be like, hey, med students, check this guy out.
Oh, that's great. All right, Alec, what about you?
What was I in jail for?
I don't know. Probably
Tax fraud.
Misdemeanor. I don't know. Drugs.
Oh my
Drugs.
God.
They
Alex.
weren't mine.
Wow. Okay,
They
so I
weren't
moved to
mine.
California, and you assume I'm a druggie now?
Well, I know you're a druggie now. Come on.
All right. Well, if it was for something like drugs or like a misdemeanor or something, I would take the 5 years in jail. I'd rather be in jail for 5 years for like something like that. You know, if it was like, you know, murder or something that like, yeah, I would rather be in a coma for a decade than have done that.
Fair enough. All right. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take the 5 years in prison. Honestly, that sounds kind of like a good way to just be. You get food on the house. You don't have to pay rent. All you can do is like hang outside and play basketball. I don't see an issue with it.
Fair enough.
You wake up from your coma and you've got a decade's worth of medical bills to handle. So.
Oh, this is also true.
Yeah, and you can't get out of bed because you've been laying there for 10 years.
Well, I could get out of bed because Jesse, you would have come and moved my legs for me.
Oh. Well, I'm a sweet guy.
I'm publicly
I think I
volunteering
would,
you for that right now. But yeah, Adam, what would you do?
I think I'd go for jail, mostly because I could practice doing pull-ups. So maybe after the 5 years, I could do at least one pull-up.
I don't know, man. That seems like a lofty goal.
It is a pretty lofty goal for 5 years, but I think I might be able to pull it off. Yeah. So anyway, so that's it for our episode of Millennial Malarkey. Check us out on Twitter, Mill Malarkey. That's at MILL Malarkey. Hit us up. Check us out for our COVID updates, or not, because we don't post any COVID updates.
You get the one update now, and that's kind of it. But
Yeah.
you can listen to this a couple times whenever you're curious for a increasingly out-of-date update.
Absolutely. All right. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye, boys.
Anybody, Jesse, do you have any closing thoughts before we head to the Would You Rather? Jesse?
I'm here.
Oh, I was thinking maybe there was another lightning storm or something.
That was my first thought too.
No.